take place over the next year. Think about the transformation that you and I could witness in communities all across the land.
That's Housing Secretary Scott Turner. He made the announcement at the Museum of the Bible. Rupert Murdoch's family has reached a deal on control of his media empire after his death. The agreement ensures no change in direction at Fox News. The deal creates a trust giving control of the Fox Corporation to Lachlan Murdoch, Rupert's chosen heir, along with his younger sisters. The new trust will be in place until 2050. SRNnews.com.
Here's a word of warning from Hebrews chapter 2, verse 3. How shall we escape if we neglect so great salvation, which at the first began to be spoken by the Lord, and was confirmed unto us by them that heard him? A word of warning from God's Word, the Bible, Hebrews chapter 2, verse 3.
Did you know VCY has a birthday club for boys and girls under the age of 12? You can enroll your children at vcybirthdayclub.com. That's vcybirthdayclub.com.
VCY America is KVCX Gregory and WVIW Bridgeport. Christian Information Radio.
History was made on today's date. Stay tuned for an American Minute with Bill Federer.
The same year the U.S. won California from Mexico, some workers constructing a sawmill for John Sutter on the South Fork of the American River discovered gold. News spread like fire, and soon 49ers, as the prospectors were called, poured in from all parts of the world. Quickly populated, California became the 31st state on this day, September 9th, 1850. The Constitution, which prohibited slavery, stated in its preamble, "We, the people of the state of California, grateful to Almighty God for our freedom, in order to secure and perpetuate its blessings, do establish this Constitution."
This has been an American Minute with Bill Federer. For a free transcript, call American Minute at 1-888-USA-WORD.
VCY America presents Crosstalk, a nationwide call-in program discussing issues that have an effect on our families, our communities, our churches, our nation, and our world. Crosstalk, an opportunity for you to voice your concerns for biblical principles. And now live by satellite and around the world on the internet at vcyamerica.org. Here is today's Crosstalk.
And friends, it's happening all over again. This time the target is Pennsylvania, West Virginia, and Ohio. What are we speaking of? Carbon capture pipelines. And the tactics are the same, using eminent domain to take whatever property they want. Can one stand up against such tyranny like we saw took place in other states like South Dakota and Iowa? We're going to be getting into that issue today. Further, we're going to ask the question as to what is going on across our nation as the dream of owning a single-family home becomes unattainable. Why are homes becoming unaffordable? Why are we seeing the mass building of so many apartment buildings? Why are so often we are hearing of a housing crisis? Well, joining us today to address these private property issues and private property being under attack, we welcome back Tom DeWeese, president of American Policy Center, one of the nation's leading advocates of individual liberty, free enterprise, private property rights, personal privacy, back-to-basics education, American sovereignty and independence, and protecting our constitutionally guaranteed rights. He's the author of 3 books, Now Tell Me I Was Wrong, Erase, and Sustainable, The War on Free Enterprise, Private Property, and Individuals. Tom, thank you for joining us today on Crosstalk.
It's always a pleasure, Jim. Thank you. Appreciate it.
So let's first address this matter of the carbon capture pipeline to impact landowners, homeowners, and property owners in Pennsylvania, West Virginia, and Ohio. And I thought, Tom, haven't we just sung this song before, but it was in the upper Midwest? Now we're just on another verse. You just put out an urgent alert. What's going on?
Well, yes, I got familiar with this whole thing in Iowa, South Dakota, North Dakota, Minnesota, and Nebraska. a 1,300 mile pipeline there, carbon capture pipeline to bury CO2 in the ground. And to build the pipeline, they were going into threatening farmers that if they didn't sign voluntary easements to allow them to have the property, then they were going to just take it by eminent domain. And they got such intimidation going with this. Farmers would show up at meetings, public meetings, hundreds of them, saying, we don't want this, we don't want this. And the elected officials and the people behind the pipeline pay absolutely no attention to them, and they just started using incredible intimidation to take the property. And finally, in South Dakota, the farmers, they tried some major intimidation tactics there. A farmer named Jared Bosley, they came and destroyed parts of his crops and so forth because he was opposition. And farmers went to the legislature. Finally, the governor of South Dakota signed legislation just recently to ban the use of eminent domain by these carbon capture pipeline companies. Now we're finding that in Ohio, starting in western Pennsylvania, around Washington, Pennsylvania, through Wheeling, West Virginia, and into Marietta, Ohio. And I just got off the phone with an activist in Ohio who now says also Cleveland, so it's going in that direction too. This is 900 miles of pipeline that doing exactly the same thing. And obviously the Ohio legislature is completely out of touch with anything going on around them because they've got two bills, one in the House, one in the Senate, to give these companies the power of eminent domain to go in and take the land.
Tom, we need to kind of back up a little bit because you've indicated before that putting carbon capture pipelines designed to bury CO2 in the ground is anti-science. What's this all about?
Well, the whole idea is that they're setting up these things that taking CO2 and out of the atmosphere and so forth and burying it in the ground to protect our environment, that our carbon footprint. We hear that everywhere. Well, the fact of the matter is that CO2 is not a pollutant. Every living thing on Earth needs CO2. And I have a chart that came from the U.S. Navy. The title of the chart is CO2 Starvation. It says that we need about 1,600 parts per million just for normal living. And at the moment, we are approaching 400 parts per million. And so here are these incredible things. They're moving to save the environment, to bury CO2 that we need in the ground.
Wow. So, in essence, we have a CO2 shortage.
Yes, we do. And, and the other thing is that the EPA has just changed its policy, which used to follow that carbon was a pollutant, and they've changed it and said, no, it's not. Scientifically, it is not. It is necessary for nature.
So they're trying to put these pipelines in the ground for the through the ground and burying this stuff in the ground. Do we know the net effect of what would happen with that gas?
Well, we had the situation when one of the pipelines erupted in Mississippi, in a small town there. It ruptured, and there's this blue gas came up. And what happens is CO2, when it comes up like that, when it's held in that kind of a quantity, it sucks down the oxygen. Even cars wouldn't run because they need oxygen to run. People started having respiratory problems. Some of them still do. This happened a couple of years ago. And one of the worst things that happened there was that first responders were never trained in a problem like this. And so they didn't know what to do. And it really covered a whole area. And now here we have these pipeline companies that want to come on to the farmer's land and just run the pipeline wherever they want. Some of them are running as close as 60 feet from the farmer's house to do this. And, we have a situation all over the country where utility lines, power lines, sewer lines, other things like that, will run against the edge of property. They run it that way. It doesn't interfere with anything along the road and that kind of thing. But these guys don't care. They're running it wherever they want. And they're saying, oh, well, the farmers are going to get some money for their land, and they can still use other parts of their land and so forth. But that's not the way it works.
Mm-hmm.
And the farmers, they need their land in a certain way. They take care of it. They prepare it. And these pipeline companies come through and just want to take whatever they want for whatever they want to do.
And you mentioned that one of the main weapons that they use to force this is eminent domain. I mean, isn't this how they intimidated landowners in Iowa and South Dakota?
Absolutely. I've got a copy of a letter sent out by Summit Carbon Solutions that they sent to all the farmers that were in the path of it, and the first part of it told all about how this was they had to do this to protect the environment, to get our CO2 out of it, and they said, we would love to have you voluntarily join us and sign an easement. Oh, we'll pay you some money for it, and then all that. But then the last paragraph of the letter said, but if you don't go along with this voluntarily, we'll get in Iowa's case, the Iowa Utilities Board to grant us eminent domain, and we'll just take it. Voluntary, mandatory volunteerism.
Right. and at the same time, Tom, you've indicated that corporate forces are really keeping the very route of this pipeline quiet. Why is that?
I think it's because of what we accomplished in Iowa and South Dakota, that we were able to make a lot of noise and build a lot of opposition. And we've called, particularly in Pennsylvania, trying to find out exactly where they plan for it to run. And they were just very standoffish and didn't tell us anything. And we've never seen a map of exactly where it's supposed to go. I've just learned by talking with different people as time has gone by the little bit of the route that I know about now. And as I said, I just got a call from an activist in Cleveland that they're now declaring in Cleveland that the steel mills are causing pollution. And so we're going to put these machines up there to suck down the CO2 out of their pollution and bury that in the ground and then move it down to southern Ohio. So we think that's another line for this whole thing.
But you're saying it's CO2 we need.
Exactly.
Wow.
Yeah.
Tom, what's interesting to me is that it is Republican members of the Ohio legislature that have introduced legislation, I understand, to grant eminent domain powers. Is that true?
Yeah, exactly. It's two Republicans in the House, two Republicans in the Senate have introduced these two bills, HB 170 and SB 136, and this is going through the Department of Natural Resources, which now will have, if these bills are passed, the power to give that power of eminent domain to the corporations as they see fit.
And what's interesting is that this is anti-private property, isn't it?
Absolutely it is. And I'll tell you, going back a little bit in history, there was the Kelo decision by the Supreme Court. And this was a situation where, it was in Delaware, I think. Pfizer was going to build a plant there. And this community where it was going to build it, they decided, well, we need to set up, make it really welcoming to them and for their employees and so forth. We need to build a hotel, shopping center, things like that. They just targeted a private community, a neighborhood, and they went through and one by one, they took these houses down there, just took them. And Suzette Kelo, who was one of the property owners, filed suit. She got it all the way to the Supreme Court, and to everyone's shock, the Supreme Court came down and said, yeah, this is okay. Ever since that day, they have now been using eminent domain in private corporations, putting private projects together, taking private property, which was never legal, never, all of a sudden we lost property rights with that, and that's what they're using.
Now, and matter of fact, that was a 5-4 Supreme Court decision, I believe, back in 2005, and I can remember waiting for that decision to come out because of the implications this would have, and it really dropped our jaws at that time, Tom.
It did. Because, this is absolutely anti-private property, and now they're using, as we've talked so many times about the agenda to go in, bring all these programs in and completely reestablish our communities and all of that smart growth. and they're using eminent domain to do it. Eminent domain is mentioned in the Constitution, but it's very, very limited. To build forts, to build roads, things like that. Never to build private projects and just take somebody's private property because we want to. And that has completely changed with that decision. And now we're seeing the results of it.
Friends, you're listening to Crosstalk on VCY America. Tom DeWeese is with us today, and now the crosshairs are over the states of Ohio, Pennsylvania, West Virginia as well, and we know that Ohio has at least introduced legislation that would allow this to go forward, and it's Republican sponsorship of these. Friends, we're just seconds from the break, but when we come back from the break, I'm going to tell you what committees these are in Ohio, and also the phone numbers for the key sponsors of this eminent domain aspect for the carbon capture pipelines in the state of Ohio. So be ready to jot down some numbers right after the break. Friends, you're listening to Crosstalk on VCY America. Private property under attack again. Tom DeWeese with us today, President of the American Policy Council. You're listening to Crosstalk on the VCY American Network.
Back to Genesis with Dr. John Morris, scientist and creation researcher with the Institute for Creation Research. Dr. Morris, what can you tell me about Neanderthal man?
Chris, from a biblical perspective, Neanderthal man was a human just like me or you. They evidently were an ethnic group that migrated away from Babel, living in very harsh conditions, but were human nonetheless. Archaeological discoveries have shown that they used agriculture, they buried their dead, they had art, musical instruments, they were humans just like me and you. Those who assigned them to subhuman categories suggested that they didn't have the right kind of hands to use tools. But a recent study has shown that they had thumb and forefingers just like ours with just as much dexterity. In every sense, they were as human as you and me, descendants of Noah, souls for whom Christ died. Going back to Genesis makes all the data fit so well.
Thanks, Dr. Morris. For more on creation, visit our website at www.icr.org.
Private property under attack again. Yeah, we'll use eminent domain. Voluntarily give us your land because we've got this hanging over your head. The carbon capture pipelines. Certainly, they did not learn the lesson of what was happening in the state of South Dakota. South Dakota has now passed legislation barring the use of eminent domain for this. Landowners must give their voluntary consent. And it is not forced volunteerism. And now the attempt is taking place in Ohio, Pennsylvania, West Virginia as well. Again, having difficulty finding the exact layout for this because they have seen opposition to this in the past. They do want to keep it quiet. Certainly jurisdictions know what's going on, but jurisdictions don't always share that with the people. And Tom, we saw the people of South Dakota stand up and saw this defeated. Can the people in Ohio do the same thing with these bills that have come forth?
I believe they can, and that's what I'm working on. We put out that alert last night to people not only in Ohio. I put it out over the country because I know that it would really shake up the legislators. They start getting calls and stuff from people all over the country. That'll get their attention. But I'm working now. The next step is to get the Ohio activists involved. Been on the phone today to some, and just build this up. And they haven't started building this yet, so it's not too late to stop it. I fully believe if these two bills on eminent domain are defeated, the carbon capture pipeline will die.
Friends, in Ohio, and I'll give this here first time, do we know if legislation's introduced in Pennsylvania or West Virginia yet?
Have not seen anything there.
Okay.
I've not been alerted to that.
Okay, but it has in Ohio, and there are multiple individuals who listen to this program in Ohio. But friends, even if you're not in Ohio, you may be in South Dakota and say, hey, they tried doing that here. Please don't do that to our neighbors in Ohio. It's S136. It's Senate Bill 136. And in this, they have put it in the Energy Committee, which is chaired by Brian Chavez. And it just so happens, Tom, that Brian is a co-sponsor of the legislation as well. They put it in his committee, I guess, to make sure that he can railroad this through. But, friends, you can reach out to Brian Chavez at this number, anywhere across the country, a public number here to a public official who is wanting to, through this legislation, put eminent domain on people in Ohio. Do I have that right, Tom?
Yes, yeah. It gives the power, the Department of Natural Resources, particularly in the House bill, to be in charge of this. And as the carbon capture pipeline company begins to move forward, if they get opposition from someone, they want to take the land, then the state, this Department of Natural Resources can say, give them the power of eminent domain to just go ahead and take it.
The phone number to the chair of this committee, of the Energy Committee in the Senate, this is the Ohio Senate, Brian Chavez, his number is 614-466-6508. 614-466-6508. And friends, one of the reasons why it's important that people call from other states, because if they're successful in Ohio, they're going to try the same thing there in Pennsylvania and West Virginia and many, many other states here across this nation as well. Tom?
Oh, absolutely. This has been growing. It's not just, I've seen them talking about carbon capture pipelines all over the country. And by the way, we sent a letter to every single member of the Ohio legislature. They should be getting it this week. And I also included with that this chart from the U.S. Navy that I talked about on CO2 starvation. So I gave them that information as well with the letter.
Now, friends, in the House in Ohio, it's HB 170, HB 170, and this is in the House Natural Resources Committee, whose chair just happens to be a co-sponsor of the legislation, Monica Robb Blasdell, and her number is 614-466-8022. That's 614-466-8022. I see another co-sponsor there in the House is Bob Peterson, and phone number for Bob Peterson is 614-466-3506. But we're talking Republican-sponsored legislation for the power of eminent domain to take people's land for this carbon capture pipeline?
The very people who should be supporting protection of private property rights and limited government. That's what they're supposed to be doing. And the Republicans have a strong majority in the Ohio legislature, but they, this is what we're dealing with, that they are putting these programs in place anyway.
So, friends, you may reach out to, these are chairs of the committee and also co-sponsors of this legislation. And, Tom, there really needs, from those within Iowa, they need to be contacting their own senators and their own House members because of the fact that if this is coming from the grassroots from all over the state in particular, it is something that will cause their ears to perk up, and rather than just carte blanche, see this pass through.
Yeah, and that's what I'm hoping for, is that that's why I sent the alert out nationwide instead of just to Ohio. And people in Iowa and South Dakota and so forth, they've lived through this. They know what it's like. It would be very helpful if they would be able to call these people you just gave the number out to, the people to sponsor these bills, and say, do you know what you're doing? Do you know what's happened here? We've lived through this.
Let me just mention, we're going to hit another issue here as well pertaining to property rights and so forth. But before we move on, again, we're talking about S-136. This is legislation that is in the Energy Committee, which is chaired by Brian Chavez, who is also a co-sponsor of the legislation. His number is 614-466-6508. The House bill is number 170, House Bill 170, which is in the House Natural Resources Committee. Its chair, Monica Robb Blasdell, is also a co-sponsor of the legislation. And her number is 614-466-8022. And certainly you can let your voice be heard. And if you think it's a great thing for them to use eminent domain to take people's property, well, you've got the right to say that. But I just know this, that there are many people who said, no, we're very concerned about this in our state, and you have the opportunity to speak up. You've been warned. You've been told about it. Tom, I'd like you to touch on yet another. Did you have anything more to add to this?
I just want to add one more thing. The corporation that we have found that is behind this, its name is Tenaska, Tenaska. I believe they're working out of Pennsylvania, but they have been involved in this kind of stuff for quite a while. But they apparently are the ones. They've created what they call the Tri-State Carbon Capture Pipeline Hub. So
okay.
That's where it's coming from.
Okay. So let's touch on another area as well, and that is the hopelessness of many today, especially young adults, that home ownership will never be within their reach. And we're also hearing of a housing shortage. What's happening in the housing industry that all of a sudden home ownership is no longer attainable?
Well, you have these policies being put in place. We mentioned the smart growth and all of that, changing the very structure of our communities. And the goal is to lead everything, push it all downtown, basically all the center of town if they can, and have high-rise apartment buildings and that sort of thing there. And we've talked before about these movements around the country to end any kind of zoning protections for single-family neighborhoods, and move these kinds of high-rises and rental properties there. As they do that in those neighborhoods, the property values collapse, and then people quickly sell the property to get out of there. And then companies like BlackRock move in there, who are major promoters of these policies all over the world. And they move in there and they begin to build. They make billions off of building the high-rises and so forth. And so then when this happens, the argument that they use in doing this is, here we have a housing shortage, and here people living in these single-family neighborhoods, maybe there's 4 people living in this space with a backyard and all of that. We could build a high-rise there and have 100 families in that space. We have a housing crisis. We don't have a housing crisis. We have a government crisis. The housing industry could build all the homes everybody needs in the way they need them, but they are being blocked from doing that by regulations in the community dictating how things are built, where they can be built, where they can't be built. We got to have open space, all that kind of stuff, and we end up with these problems of not enough.
Tom, you have mentioned that Portland, Oregon is a poster child of what you call a government-created housing crisis. What's happened in Portland?
Well, clear back over 20 years ago, they were the poster child to put together a boundary, what they called an urban growth boundary around the city. They said it is dangerous to the environment to have the city grow out like that. That means more people have to drive their cars to get around and so forth. So that they put that urban growth boundary around the community and said no growth outside of that. You can fly over Portland and see it, really. It's that dominant. And what's happened in those 20-some years since that happened is the population has grown by almost 80%, but the boundary has not. And now all of a sudden they're saying we have a housing shortage, and so they're looking at inside the boundary any single-family neighborhoods. We've got to get rid of those, and we've got to build some more high-rises and all of that. The high-rises can only go so high, and then they run out of oxygen.
Yeah. Hence the CO2 pipelines, huh?
Exactly, yeah.
And Tom, at the same time, many are finding that the apartment rents are just gone through the roof as well.
Well, it does. I mean, when you've got a shortage of something, that first of all makes the cost go up, but we have gone through a massive inflation situation, and that's making the price of everything go up. And what we're finding now is young people. Marjorie Taylor Greene put out a chart, which I've used, that shows that only 12% of 30-year-old Americans are married and have a home of their own and are having children. Only 12%. The young people cannot afford to that. I have talked to many, many young people telling me this, that they can't afford the rents. It used to be when we were young, we would get out of the house, or our parents' house, and we would get a cheap apartment somewhere and start a life, begin to get on our own, and then as life went along, you earn more and so forth, then you would maybe get a house, and maybe even later you get a bigger house or whatever. But you had your own family, you had your own your babies and everything there. But these kids today can't do that. Even the rents are higher than we would have paid for a $500,000 house.
Wow. And truly amazing. Tom, we're just 30 seconds from a break, but you've got a lot of info on your website. Give us a word on it.
At AmericanPolicy.org. And yes, we have we've written several articles on this and on the carbon capture issue, and I've got a good collection there. Go in there, and you can find them. You can find our books as well. And please sign up there to get our updates. If you have an email address, sign up for that, and we will keep you posted. We send things out every week.
So, friends, again, the website is AmericanPolicy.org, AmericanPolicy.org, and just put your email in for email alerts, and you'll stay abreast as to the matters that Tom is working on, and certainly when private property comes under attack like it is right now, he is putting out alerts on this to make you aware. That is AmericanPolicy.org. We've got some more information after the break. You're listening to Crosstalk. James 4:14 poses this thought. For what is your life? It is even a vapor that appeareth for a little time and then vanisheth away. Have you ever stopped to consider where you will spend eternity? You may say, but I'm a good person. I care for my family. I feed the poor. I stand up for life and traditional values. While all of these things are good, they fall far short of God's standard. Every one of us has a sin issue that must be dealt with. Our sin separates us from God, and each of us deserves to be eternally removed from God in everlasting punishment. But out of God's great love, He sent His Son, Jesus Christ, to bear our sins, shed His blood, die on the cross, and rise again. He is the only way of salvation, and it's imperative for you to place your trust in Him. If you're wrestling with this issue, we'd like to send you a complimentary leaflet, Where Will You Spend Eternity? To receive a copy, just ask for it when you call us at 1-800-729-9829. 800-729-9829. You're listening to Crosstalk on VCY America. I hope those of you listening in Pennsylvania, Ohio, West Virginia in particular have had your ears perk up as it relates to matters that are impacting your states, but all of us really ought to, because we have seen this process go through. I mean, this is the same song, second verse, maybe third, maybe fourth verse, but it is that in which they are seeking to use eminent domain to force this upon landowners, and the people in South Dakota, they stood up to this and were not going to allow this, and passed legislation to protect landowners. And the question is, will the people in Ohio do the same thing? Right now, it's Republican sponsorship of this legislation that is pushing this through. We gave out the phone numbers earlier for this with Tom DeWeese here. I tell you what, I've got a couple more issues I'm going to ask Tom, but if you'd like to start getting on board with your questions or brief comments, our phone number here today is 800-733-9829. That's 800-733-9829 here today for Crosstalk. Tom DeWeese, our guest, and taking your questions and or brief comments. Tom, I've seen writings of yours in which you mentioned that the plan of the Sustainable Development Movement has as a central target private property. Break that down for us.
Well, I think we're seeing it here, the complete reorganization of communities, and people, private property ownership should be, it's yours, and you should be able to stand there and say, I don't want to do this, I don't want to participate in this, it's my property. And then you look at all of the different things that you have to have a permit to do on your property. Every single move you go to make has some kind of permit on it. All of this is control. It is not private property ownership. You're no better than a tenant in an apartment building, and being told exactly what to do. And this is all the smart growth programs. This is the World Economic Forum. Here's the incredible thing: the guy who is the head of BlackRock, his name is Fink, and he has now become the head of the World Economic Forum, and he said their goals are no private home ownership and no private automobiles. Imagine that. The control. This is their goal. This is what I've been trying to reveal for a long, long time. And now this guy, he's got the power where when they have all these people going in getting proper, the policies through local legislatures and local city councils and so forth, and then his corporation, BlackRock, goes in there, buys those property for a song because people are trying to get out of those areas, and then they make millions to go in and build the high rises and put it all in place. I mean, this is what we're up against.
Friends, let's get your reaction to these matters. Our number 800-733-9829. Lines are open. 800-733-9829. Tom, don't we also have to acknowledge the impact of illegal aliens on the housing matter? I mean, I understand just last Friday that Secretary Scott Turner of the of HUD said that they're launching a nationwide audit of public housing authorities in order to verify tenant eligibility.
Yeah, and it definitely is one of the things that was causing overcrowding in these communities. I mean, here you have, like I was talking about with Portland, where you've got the urban growth boundary, and you can't build outside of that. So inside, now they bring in all these illegals. I mean, we had millions of these people brought in here, and a lot of apartment buildings and so forth taken over by them, even in neighborhoods, getting single-family homes and stuff. So. Yeah, absolutely, and it's going to be interesting as they're getting rid of all these people, how much the housing crisis maybe would start to disappear.
Yeah, indeed. Again, friends, our number is 800-733-9829. Let's get our lines packed out here. Have room for a couple more. 800-733-9829. There go the lines. Sue is calling from Arlington, Texas. Sue, you're on the air.
Hello. I figure, forget all the legislators, forget the Senate, forget the House. This needs to go straight to Trump. I mean, it seems that if it's something environmentally pushed, like the bearing of oxygen in a pipeline, that would have been under Biden's rule, that was allowed. But I don't think Trump, if he knew about it, that he would allow it. Have you, Tom DeWeese, gone to Trump?
Trump has talked about this in a negative way. I mean, he's opposed to it, and I think they're moving on that. But it's vitally important that while he's moving on things at that level, that you work at it on the local level as well. We've got to put them in a pincer move. Your local representatives are being surrounded by these non-governmental organizations that are pushing these policies, and they're allowing it and pushing it through there, even in the state legislature. And state legislatures are passing legislation. If your city council were to pass some property rights legislation to protect people from this, several states, the state legislature passes laws and says, nope, can't do that, we're going to dictate this.
Yeah.
This is where we have to fight from the
I'm
bottom
sure
up.
Trump actually knew that the World Economic Forum was involved, and that he would immediately cut it out. He would do a ban against it, especially because he wants to work for the working class people. And if the working class people, only 12% of them, can afford a home with a backyard for their children, then that's not for the working class people. That he to do something about this.
Sue,
I'm going to tell you right now, if you sit back and wait for Trump to do it and not do it at home, you're going to lose.
Yeah, and they almost lost in South Dakota. They almost lost in the neighboring states there. Sue, thank you for the call. And again, Donald Trump has taken a lot of action on various things, and DOJ has exposed what, a lot of these funds that were going to these NGOs across the country and putting a stop to some of this funding going on, and everything goes through court battles. But Tom, you're right. On a local level, this is what's going on, because what happens in a few years when Donald Trump is not there? It is important that law and legislation be put in place for people on the local level. This is city council meetings that are making these determinations, and then state legislatures like what we have going on in Ohio right now. And keep in mind, it was a state legislature in South Dakota that put the brakes on it there. And these are some aspects where the president doesn't have jurisdiction.
And you have to see that these forces are massive. And you've got Donald Trump at the top. They're attacking him from every direction.
On every issue.
And he's only one man. I don't care how much staff he's got and everything else.
Yeah.
He can't focus on everything. You are responsible in your community. Your elected officials were elected to represent you, and you've got to challenge them and make them responsible for their own activities. To challenge them. Who do you stand for? Who do you represent? Do you represent the people who voted for you, or do you represent these private corporations?
Our next caller is Larry from Scottsdale, Arizona. Larry, you're on the air.
Yeah, I just wanted to know if anybody knew about in the 60s and 70s the government was buying motels with taxpayer money and giving it to people from India.
I never heard that.
No. Yeah.
Well, I have never heard it either, but I've watched it happen. And they bought the motels all across the country, and then I think they paid people in India to come over here, and they gave them the motels.
Yeah, and Larry, I suggest you get that documentation, send it on to Tom, and can look further into it. Thank you for the call. Craig is next in Madison, South Dakota. Craig, you're on the air.
Hello. Thanks for this great topic today. And Tom, I saw you a couple years ago. You spoke right near Sioux Falls, South Dakota. It was T, South Dakota, and I loved your presentation.
Great.
Yeah, I'd like to just think of how we're being bombarded with this CO2 stuff. I'm a farmer, and, they talk about this carbon index score that agriculture needs to change their practices to be better to the environment. And then now we're getting hit with these data centers. Our state is, that's all happening all across the country.
It is.
Yeah, where are the environmentalists and climate change people about these data centers? You don't hear a peep.
Craig, you're raising a great issue. Tom addressed this because we're seeing about they're virtually having to build energy plants, to increase our energy to handle these data centers. And where's all the people crying out, no, it's going to harm the environment?
We have been told by certainly through the Biden administration, but all the administrations before that and the entire environmental movement about how we have got to control building and we have got to have open space all over the country to save the environment. Now they're filling that open space with these monster data centers. We have 200 of them here in Virginia. There's one of them that covers something like 10,000 square feet or something.
Right.
They're putting America under roof under all of this. And where is the environmental movement? These hypocrites who tell us, to lose one farm, you lose all farms. And, but where are they defending them? They're not there.
Yeah.
And I'll tell you this, it's the reason is because it has all these policies have never had anything really to do with protecting the environment. It is about control. The use of the environment, making farmers use certain practices which are putting them out of business, and all of that is all designed to gain control and gain control of the land.
Craig, thanks for raising that issue.
And
thank you, Craig. Alice in Kennewick, Washington, you're on the air.
Thank you. There's an ancient principle that I've known since high school, follow the money.
Yeah.
Where is the money coming from to build these carbon pipelines, and who's going to benefit from those pipelines?
Mm-hmm.
It started out with the Biden administration. In the legislation they put together, they put all this money in there for these. Now, the good news is that Trump is melting some of that money away. Not near enough yet. That's because of Congress. But, they're focusing on that. The other thing is the World Economic Forum and these other guys, they have billions and billions of dollars. There are 20,000 non-governmental organizations operating in this stuff that have these big budgets. They fully believe that in the next congressional election that they are going to win and throw Trump out. So it's a temporary thing. So they are using these massive piles of money that they've got to keep moving forward, to keep the agenda moving forward.
Wow. Thank you, Alice. We have, Dale is next in Port Washington, Wisconsin. You're on the air, Dale.
Yeah, thanks. You guys are hitting, I was going to call about the data center. We're having that happen right here in the town of Port Washington, just north of you guys.
Yeah.
And granted, the data center bought a lot of the land, paid good bucks for it, but the people that didn't want to sell, basically they squeezed them out and said, hey, you're going to get annexed into the city. Your taxes on your land will be astronomical compared to what your farmland is worth. And now they're going to start fighting with the town of Saukville, which borders this, put in power lines. And like I said, it's a private corporation, and you guys covered it all. I just wanted to comment that it's happening right here, just up the road.
Right there in Port Washington. Thank you, Dale, for raising that. And Tom, that's happening around the country.
Everywhere, all over the country. And as we were talking, you mentioned about the monstrous water supply, the monstrous electricity. They are changing the culture of the communities. My home state in Ohio, in areas where it was very, very rural as I was growing up, are now covered under these data centers. And they completely changed the entire culture and the way of life there.
Tom DeWeese, our guest here today on Crosstalk. A quick break and more of your phone calls. Got a couple open lines now at 800-733-9829. 800-733-9829. Back in a minute here on Crosstalk.
For the Worldview Report, I'm Brennan House. Our website is worldviewtube.com. This week, Israel struck and reportedly took out leaders of Hamas in Qatar, also known as Qatar, depending on how you say it. There are reports now from the White House press secretary, Caroline Leavitt, that President Trump let the government of Qatar know that this was coming. This is very disturbing. And the White House seemed to apologize for the attack by Israel and told the Qatari government it will not happen again. Why is President Trump doing this? These are horrific murderers behind October 7th. This is very disturbing, and I think one that, all of us as Christians should be thinking about and praying about, because it certainly does not invite God's blessing on our country. We need to make sure our president understands just how evil this government of Qatar is, as he said in his own first administration. Why has he changed his tune? I'm Brandon House.
Private property under attack again, and this time again we're focusing on Ohio, Pennsylvania, and West Virginia, but your state may be next. Maybe your state is involved in the battle in some point already. Tom DeWeese at American Policy Center, bringing this to our attention, just sent out an urgent alert to those on his email list. If you'd like to be a part of his email list, just go to AmericanPolicy.org and put in your email address and you'll be informed. AmericanPolicy.org. And just before we go back to the phone lines, again, let me give out two phone numbers that we did in Ohio in particular. There are two bills that have been introduced that would, in essence, grant eminent domain for them to take people's land for the purpose of carbon capture pipelines. You can reach out to the chair of the Energy Committee. This is regarding S136. This is in Ohio. The phone number for Brian Chavez, 614-466-6508. And then on the House side, HB 170, and that's in the House Natural Resources Committee, which is chaired by Monica Robb Blasdell, who is also a co-sponsor of the legislation. Her number is 614-466-8022. Let's get right back to the phone lines. Eddie is calling from Glasgow, Kentucky. And Eddie, you're on the air.
Thank you for taking my call, Jim. It looks to me like the wealth of this country is being given away or taken. And when I say given away or taken, it's like the mafia. Instead of the government's in control, and all we are is working, and they're taking. And I don't know that it ever will stop. But one of the problems this country's got is it's got a lot of money. These immigrants that were invited to this country, were they all rich? Can they afford to pay their rent? Can they afford to buy their groceries? Or is it just us that struggle to pay rent and to buy groceries? I don't really understand why we don't have no representation. I thought the government was supposed to be of the people, by the people, and for the people. And if we don't have any representation, there's not supposed to be no taxation. I think we're paying for something and getting nothing in return, but I'm done.
Thank you. Tom?
What we have to understand, and so few of us do, is there is a global agenda. The purpose of that global agenda is global control. And I've talked about the World Economic Forum. There are other organizations along with that, ICLEI, some others. And they are moving. They have what I call the shock troops. They are surrounding all of your elected officials. I've talked to people in different city councils, and they'll say there are 100 of these groups that are there pushing these policies. They have the money behind it. They have all this stuff, and your elected officials don't hear us. We aren't there. Our people don't want to be at these public meetings, and so we don't go. And so they're not hearing from our side at all. They're not hearing any pressure from us, and they just go ahead and say, well, this is just the way it's done now. That's just the legitimate role of government. That's why you're losing at every point. It is an agenda to take control and end the sovereignty of the United States and the ideals that our founding fathers had.
Thank you for the call. Let's go next to Mark in Olney, Illinois. Mark, you're on the air.
Yes, I just want to say it's been probably 6 or 8 years ago the carbon capture yahoos were here in southern Illinois, and they went through 4 counties before they finally realized we weren't going to sell out to them. But I say that only because Pritchard, communist leader here, did away with all our power plants, so I guess there wasn't anything to capture. And the other point is, farmland here leases for about 150 to 300 cash rent per acre. And I just talked to a guy the other day that signed up for solar for $2,800 an acre. So we're taking our farmland and turned into phony electricity.
Wow.
So you're on the right track, and I appreciate you. Thanks.
Thank you, Mark, from Olney, Illinois. And Tom, he said we stood up, and the 3 different counties said we're not going that direction, and they gave up.
Yeah, that's what happens. And when you get a series of counties, they don't have to be all together. But you could have one here, there, and if they would stand up and protect the property rights of their people there, if enough of them do that, even if the state legislature is saying, no, you got to do it this way, they back off when they start to see that opposition.
Tony's from Neilsville, Wisconsin. You're on the air, Tony.
Hi, Jim. Thanks for taking my call. I just wanted to say that this is rules for thee, but not for me. And there's no difference in these parties anymore. The Republicans are just as crooked and slimy as the Democrat Party is. And this is exactly the reason why in 2012 that I refused to vote for Mitt Romney and Paul Ryan, because I could see right through the smoke and see where this was headed. And when I call these numbers that you give, or I take the initiative myself, these defund police people, they send the police to my house.
Okay, tell you what, we're going to move on, Tony. We're going to other issues here, but certainly we are seeing people on both sides of the aisle who've been behind this, and we give out their phone numbers and share what's going on. Barbara is next in Huron, South Dakota. Barbara, you're on the air.
Yes, I was remembering back when we had farm animals, and the farm animals passed gas, and they did not want the farm animals to do this.
Right.
And then, too, they were trying to get us to eat bugs and have skin made from getting from, say, actors and actresses and stuff, false.
Well, tell you what we saw was a war on beef take place. Barbara, thank you very much for that. And we're down to 30 seconds left in the program, so we don't have time for additional calls, dialogue there. But, Tom, final comments you'd like to make on this whole matter?
Well, I can't emphasize it enough. We have got to work from the local and the state level to push back on this. You've got to do that if you want to stop this. And if you get enough counties that stand up to this, or communities, even the legislature will back off. So get involved and don't sit back and watch and say, well, there's nothing we can do. Yes, you can.
Yeah, and that's how it started locally in the state of South Dakota, Tom.
Yes, absolutely.
Friends, you can stay informed by going to AmericanPolicy.org, putting your email address in for his alerts, AmericanPolicy.org. American Policy Center, they are, reading the leading advocate of individual liberty, free enterprise, private property rights, personal privacy, back to basics education, and American sovereignty and independence. Wow, there's a lot going on here, friends, but you're informed, and we thank you for joining us here today on Crosstalk. The question is, will your voice be heard? Thanks for listening.
You've been listening to Crosstalk via satellite and the internet from VCY America. Views expressed may or may not be those of this station. For a CD of today's program, send a donation of $6 or more to VCY Tape Ministry, 3434 West Kilbourne Avenue, Milwaukee, Wisconsin, 53208. Or download by RSS or podcast from crosstalkamerica.com. And join us again for Crosstalk.